Hello everyone. So this will be one of those big compendium videos where we will be discussing everything that you need to know about prelims. And this is not just everything that you need to know. If you actually follow the advice that I'm going to give you in this video, you will have a good chance of clearing prelims 2026. Now, this will be a long video because we want to cover each and everything that is important. But at the same time, I will try and keep it as crisp as possible so that it doesn't get overly long. Still, it'll be as long as it needs to be. So given that we will be putting chapters in this video and you can skip around to the chapters that you require. For example, if you want to only understand how do I analyze tests or what is the importance of PYQs, how do I revise, you can skip to the relevant section and get the most value out of it as and when you require. Right. So with that, let's get started. First and foremost, who am I and why should you listen? My name is Abhijit Yadav. I've given 6 attempts at the UPSC Civil Services exam. I've cleared 4 prelims. I've gotten selected twice in 2017 and 2018. And on top of that, since 2021, as part of UPSCprep.com, me and the team have enabled 100 plus IAS and IPS selections. Now, this is just IAS and IPS. Overall, agar hum dekhen, तो then multiple more students over the years have been associated with us. These are my mark sheets 2017 and 2018. So 2018, if you'll see, it's saying not recommended over here, but this later on became part of the reserve list. Now, all of these things aside, what exactly are we going to discuss in today's video? We will be discussing prelims ka basic info. What is the date of the exam? What is the format of the exam? How many marks, positive, negative, सारी चीजों के बारे में we will talk about. Then we'll talk about syllabus and book list. I'll give you the most brief book list possible for covering each and every aspect of your general studies as well as CSAT preparation. Then we'll talk about courses. How do you think about choosing a course? Matlab, should a course just be recorded classes or it should just be mentorship, or like how do you think about these things? Then I'll share some topper secrets. Now, hota kya hai? A lot of the times we are studying, we are working hard, but there are some minor changes and errors that are required. Errors need to be removed, changes need to be implemented. The idea is simple. Just working hard is not enough. You must also work in the right direction. So there are some things that over the years, multiple toppers, students associated with UPSCprep.com also, and otherwise in general also, most of them understand these basic things. And those I'll be sharing with you over here. Finally, we'll talk about tests. How do you review tests? And the importance of PYQs and how do you analyze them. Beyond that, we will also be talking about revision, how to make notes, when to make notes, should you make notes, consistency, mindset. Now, right now, Prelims 360 course we have. This is a one-stop course for UPSC Prelims 2026. There is an early bird discount going on till the 31st of December. Now, you don't need to buy this course to get all of the information that I'll any which way be sharing in this video, but I just wanted to put it out there. You can read about this later on. Now, let's get started with the most important question, that what exactly are we trying to do? What is the end game? Now, end game से सबसे पहली चीज आती है, is it even possible to clear UPSC prelims in 5 months? Can it be done? And for this, I'll give you a short answer. Can it be done? Meaning, can I clear prelims? Yes. In 5 months' time, you can, if you study hard, if you do the right things, you can clear prelims. But if you're talking about civil services exam as a whole, that just in 5 months, I'm also going to clear prelims and then mains and the interview, probably not. Now, in this, obviously, there is that caveat. There might be somebody who's very, very talented and very, very already has a lot of the skills that are required for this exam, and they may be able to clear in 5 months. But for most people, if you've not done your optional, if you've not done any answer writing practice, then you suddenly show up right now, end of December, early January, okay, I want to clear civil services in 5 months, going to be very, very, very difficult. But if you're talking about just prelims, yes, it is possible to clear prelims with 5 months of concerted effort. Now, can it be done? Whenever somebody is asking me this question, there is also an implied question over here in which, can I do it? Because obviously it can be done. There are people who do it every year, but can I do it? Because at this point, a lot of people ask themselves these sorts of questions or constantly remind themselves of the fact that, I'm an average student. Can I also do it? So long as you keep reminding yourself that you are an average student, I don't think you will clear it. Because if you want to stay average, it's not going to work out. Even if you are average right now, 5 months is enough time so that you can improve. you can become a good, even a great student if you put concerted effort for the next 5 months. How do you put that effort? We'll discuss. But first and foremost, that identity that I am an average student and therefore I will always be an average student has to change. I may be an average student right now, but I can change and improve and grow to become better, to do more. You have to have that belief. Only then will it be possible to do it in 5 months, right? So what exactly is the problem with civil services exam? Why are we even asking this question that can it be done in 5 months? The problem is pretty simple. It is a lot of things to do, and this is, let's say, even if we are not talking about mains or optional, even then there is just too much to do with civil services exam. The syllabus, sources, let's say I have to read 5,000 plus pages, then I have to give tests on those pages, then I have to review them, then I also have to ensure that I am in the best mental and physical health. At the same time, I have to keep myself motivated. All of this obviously with a little bit of a time crunch, so like too much to do, too little time. SMA, you don't need to be a genius. This is something that I just said. You cannot maintain that identity of being an average student, but you don't need to be a genius either. In fact, if you are a genius, meaning somebody with an IQ of 150 plus, I believe you'll find it really hard to clear civil services exam because you will not sit and do the boring things. Civil services exam is pretty boring. Shuru mein, when you are just starting, it may seem very interesting that I'm going to read about polity, geography, economy, environment, so many new things I'm going to learn. After a point, when I'm doing the same thing for the third, fourth, fifth time, which is what you will be required to do, it will get really boring. And there, let's say if the average IQ is 100, you do need, let's say, 110 to 120 ke beech mein anywhere. Slightly above average you need to be, but you really don't need to be a genius in order to clear civil services exam. And this is not just me saying it. This is, when I talked about the first slide, I've cleared IIT, I've dropped out from IIM Calcutta, cleared civil services exam twice. It was all with the idea that I was somebody who knew how to work hard. I'm not a genius, but I know that if I put in the effort, the right effort in the right direction, I know I can move mountains. And that is the faith that you have to have in yourself, that no matter what, it is possible for me to do this. I just have to do the right things. Now, at the same time, there is a concept that I want to talk about very early on in this video, which is hierarchy of knowledge. Not all knowledge is the same. Now, hierarchy of knowledge, it's also known as Bloom's taxonomy of knowledge. अब ये technical नाम है, you don't really need to really know this, but if somebody wants to go and research more about this, definitely this is a great place for understanding how we learn. Now, Bloom's taxonomy talks about 6 levels. The 6th level is not relevant for exam purposes, so we are not going to talk about over here. We are going to talk about the 5 basic levels. Step 1 or level 1 is remembering. For example, Tropic of Cancer is a line or imaginary line that passes through 23.5 degrees north. Right? Basic. Second level pe we come to understanding. That what exactly does the Tropic of Cancer represent? That this represents that some areas of the earth where you are getting direct sunlight on, let's say, the longest day of the year, 22nd of June, 21st to 22nd of June. Now, why is that happening? Due to the tilt of the earth. So this is understanding that fact that we have had remembered there. Application. Now, direct sunlight, if it is coming on some places, that means there will be some places which will receive more sunlight and some places which will receive less sunlight. Naturally, that follows from the fact and the understanding of that fact. So therefore, Tropic of Cancer is a dividing line. Below it, there might be some areas which will receive less sunlight. Above it, there will be some areas which will receive more sunlight. So this is application. Application mein kya hua hai? We have taken that fact and we have then tried to understand the world based on that fact and the understanding of that fact. These 3 levels are very, very important for you for your prelims exam. Why? Because we'll see even through previous year questions, direct आपको इन 3 level पे questions आते हैं, right? You can be asked directly a fact that let's say who wrote songs from prison. 4 options are given of nationalist leaders कि भाई who was the person who wrote this. It's a remembering वाला thing. Right. At the same time, you might be asked, okay, government got this much money, government spent this much money, government borrowed this much money. What is the fiscal deficit? It's a more application based question. You understand what is fiscal deficit, you understand budget balancing, you will be able to apply those concepts and solve the question, right? Now, these three levels, these are more main specific: analysis, evaluation, and application. Right now, since this is a video where we're talking about everything that you need to know about prelims, so we will not be discussing too much over here. Some examples are given for your reference, but we'll come out with some different video where we'll discuss this in a lot more detail. So, prelims ke liye, we need the bottom three levels. Now, let's just get some basic information about the prelims exam. We'll talk about dates and general info. So, let's start with important dates. First and foremost, this is the UPSC का calendar, 2026 का calendar, and इसमें you'll see point number 9 and 10. Point number 9 and 10 is Civil Services Preliminary Exam and the Forest Services Preliminary Exam, which is basically the same exam. Cutoff is different. 14th of January को notification will be out. 3rd of February को last date of filling the form. And 24th of May is when you will be having your UPSC Prelims. Right. So, from now, a week or so less than 5 months you have. Now over here, what is also given, if you come for Civil Services Main Exam 2026, which will start on the 21st of August, from May, June, July, August, 3 months you have. Now 3 months, this is why I said that, if you're thinking ki in 5 months I'll clear the entire thing, it is going to be difficult. Why? Because in 3 months, also doing optional, also doing ethics and those, main specific subjects, practicing answer writing, all of that is difficult to do in those 3 months. Therefore, if you've done some of that work before, then it is a better place to be. Now, these are your important dates for now: 14th Jan, 3rd Feb, and 24th of May. Right, these are your important dates so far as we are concerned with UPSC Prelims 2026. In this, now, another important date over here, which I think is that if you are sort of applying using some category reservation, EWS, OBC, you will have to produce a certificate which is issued before this date, but it should also be within the last 12 months, meaning after 4th, 5th February of 2024 and before 3rd February of this. So in that last 12-month period, that certificate should have been issued, and that is the only one that will be considered valid for EWS and OBC. So please keep that in mind. If you're applying through either of these categories, you really need to go and get your certificate right about now, so that you are no longer in trouble. Because see, a lot of people, they start panicking between this, oh my god, I don't have a certificate, when do I do? It will take time. Government processes generally take time, so get it done right now. Coming to prelims pattern, there are two papers we have, GS and CSAT. Right, general studies is the one where you have all of the subjects: history, polity, geography, economy, environment, science and tech, art and culture, ancient medieval history, modern history, and current affairs. So all of that is general studies. CSAT is your civil services aptitude test. Aptitude test as in, this is a basic test which is qualifying in nature. So let's just do a comparison table of these two. Qualifying, no, this is marking, and this is qualifying. Marking ka matlab kya? GS is what will determine the cutoff. That whenever there is talk of ki okay, 82, 85 ka cutoff is there, it is the general studies ka paper mein marks that you need to get. In CSAT, you only need to get 67 marks. If you get 67 marks in the CSAT paper, you are good to go. Now, obviously, even that is hard for some people. So therefore, CSAT practice is a must. We'll talk about how do you do CSAT and where do you prepare from when we come to it. Number of questions: in GS, you will have 100 questions. In CSAT, you will have 80 questions. Right. So different papers, different length. Timing of both of these papers will be 2 hours each. Right. So this paper will be happening at 9:30 a.m. and this paper will be happening at 2:30 p.m. Now, a lot of people say that, I'm a night owl or I'm an early bird or whatever. Please keep in mind that no matter what is your natural preference, the paper is going to happen at these 2 times. So therefore, I should be in a zone where I am capable of, bringing my best attention and my best at these 2 times. Excuse my handwriting. Now, number of questions ke baad, Marks per question naturally will change because both these papers are total of 200 marks. Since the total is 200 for both of them, 100 questions pe you will have plus 2 marks per question and negative of 2 by 3. Right? It is minus 0.67. These are your negative. CSAT may naturally, because there are 80 questions, you will get a plus 2.5 and a negative of 2.5 by 3, which comes out to be somewhere around 0.87. Right? So this is your basic overview of the pattern of prelims. OMR sheet pay MCQ type questions you will be getting. You will have 4 options, you need to choose from them. Now, coming to syllabus and sources. So basic, we have talked about the pattern of the exam. Let's talk about the syllabus of the exam and we'll come to then the book list. For the general studies paper, which is known as paper 1, 200 marks, current events of national and international importance, history of India and the Indian national movement. So Indian national movement is what is your modern history. History of India is where you have ancient, medieval, art and culture. Right. Then you have Indian and world geography, physical, social, economic geography. This is what is known as your human geography. Right. So social and economic geography is the part which is a lot more dynamic. For example, I teach geography for UPSCprep.com. So Prelims 360 mein currently my geography classes are ongoing. Now, social and economic geography mein human element questions are asked, but physical geography is the much more important part over here. Then Indian polity and governance, some details are given. Economic and social development, which is Indian economy. Then general issues on environmental ecology, biodiversity and climate change. And finally, general science. So these are your general studies subjects. You should have some understanding of them, basics, and then a lot of current events. Now coming to CSAT. CSAT mein you have 3 parts. You have maths, you have logical reasoning, and you have comprehension. Now comprehension over here is slightly not of the class 10th level. It is good level in that you are not asked direct questions ki, okay, where is this said, is this the right answer? No, you are asked to solve questions which are based on ki, let's say you're given a passage and then can I make these logical assumptions based on the passage that you have read above. So you can then say ki, okay, yes, this is true, this is not true. It is asking you to infer ki, what exactly is it that the author is trying to say. Those first degree questions nahi पूछे जाएंगे आपसे, you'll be asked second degree questions in comprehension. Logical reasoning will be an area where let's say you have blood relations type questions. Blood relation में क्या है that you know A has B relation, B has C relation, C has D relation. So what is the relation between A and D based on all of the things that have gone on in between over here. Other logical reasoning questions will be that you know people are sitting on a table and this person is out to the left of this, that person is to like that sort of a puzzle type questions hai. Naturally doable hai, sometimes can take time. Math is the part which is you know a bit of a menace for a lot of people, and math mein number system and number system ke alawa you also get data interpretation. Data interpretation mein charts, graphs, tables, these are things that are asked. Now number systems ke alawa you know your generally percentages, your basic questions of 10th level mathematics are effectively asked over here. Now bolne ko this is 10th level mathematics that is asked, but at times it has been found that they go slightly beyond 10th level also. Questions can be slightly harder, which is particularly the case that happened in prelims 2023. So if that turns out to be the case in let's say 2026 also, if you're preparing for CSAT from right now, we want to be prepared for that sort of an eventuality, right? Ki bhai, I can always be angry at UPSC for not following its own guidelines. You know, 10th level mathematics nahi tha, it is higher than 10th level, this, that, XYZ. But eventually, what also happens is that I would have wasted one attempt on not being able to do these questions. So whenever you're preparing for CSAT, keep in mind that even though it says 10th level, it might be slightly harder. You are supposed to only get 33% marks in this exam. 33% marks out of 200 is your 67 marks. Now, a lot of people then start aiming at just getting 67 marks. Please don't do that. Try and aim for at least 70 to 75 so that you have some margin of error. Right. So with this, I want to talk about a basic differentiation between the subjects. Now, basic differentiation यहाँ पे क्या है, that there are static subjects. Static obviously meaning that they are stable. They don't change a lot and they are a lot more concept heavy. And on the other hand, we have current subjects, right? These are a lot more dynamic. Dynamic meaning constantly changing, constantly updating, and moving from there. For example, science and tech ka if we look at, so in 2020 or 2019 ka prelims, there was a question on AI. Ki can AI write poetry? 2019-20 mein it couldn't. Aaj ki date mein it can do a lot more things. So therefore, the answer to that question, if it comes again in 26, has changed. Similarly, in 2025, I think there was a question on Majorana 1, which is a quantum computing chip by Microsoft. So, like that chip had come out maybe 5-6 months before the paper. So then very, very dynamic types of questions will be coming in this region. You'll be also asked questions like, okay, what are the impacts of tariffs, and this body has been intervening in ABC region, and therefore what is the purpose of this body? So international relations, a lot of these current affairs based questions. Static questions, on the other hand, are history, polity, economy, and geography. 60 to 70% of questions that come in this section, there will also be some current affairs ka linkage here, particularly let's say about geography, if there is a place in news. Like for example, recently the president of US has been trying to push through a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, right? President Donald Trump really wants that Nobel Peace Prize. So in such a case, he has been asking Ukraine to make some territorial concessions. These territories you should give to Russia. Ukraine has been saying, no, we don't want to, but that is the discussion that is going on. So if there have been some territories that are being repeatedly mentioned in the news, it is your job now to go and check that thing on the atlas. So therefore geography में थोड़ा current का element रहेगा. Similarly, economy में if tariffs की बात हम कर रहे हैं, तो there can be an application based question which will be based on a static concept, right? Static concept क्या है? Foreign exchange rates. कि भाई if India का exchange rate is falling, is it better for exports or better for imports? The question asked on basic concept, but because tariffs have been constantly in news. So 60 to 70% of the questions in these particular subjects are from your fixed sources. So therefore, the majority of the marks that I will get in the exam, right? कि मुझे prelims में क्या करना है? I only have to get like 50 questions correct, and more than enough for clearing the cutoff very easily. 50 questions if I get correct. Naturally, I get some wrong, so therefore I need to do 60 plus questions correct, so that even if I have 20 wrong, I am fine. So that sort of a thing is relevant over here. But more importantly, if these subjects you focus on, यहाँ पे मैं focus करता हूँ, तो majority of my effort is limited to specific books. कि ये किताबें अगर मैंने कर ली, I will be able to do the large chunk of these subjects. On the other hand, these subjects are so dynamic and so variable that even if I do the basic books, I will still maybe not be able to solve the questions that are asked. So my effort priority should be static first and your current questions second. Right. As I've said, static questions can also have a current linkage. Current focus कैसे? Economy की हमने बात करी. Let's say polity में there has been some constitutional amendment that has come in. So therefore question can be asked on what is the provision in the parliament or provision in the Constitution of India for bringing forth a constitutional amendment. So this is a question that came up I think just last year. What are the three methods through which constitution can be amended? So if you've read Article 368, you will be able to do these types of questions. So but current affairs से somewhere linked. Now coming to the sources. Sources में I'll be talking about the basic bare minimum book list over here. It is much more important that you read these into 2, into 3 times rather than okay, I've read polity once, now I'm going to read it again from some other source. No, don't do that. Rather take one particular book and read it multiple times. Now I will also be sharing only one major resource over here. There are obviously other books which are also good, also useful. Like for example, if you study polity from Subhash Kashyap or D.D. Basu, both of them are good books. But for the purposes of this video, I want to keep this list very, very focused, and therefore I'll only be giving you one recommendation per subject. Right. So Indian Polity, M. Lakshmikant. If you have the latest edition, which is I think 7th or 8th edition, that is also great. Even if you have the older edition, it is fine. Itna major, there is no problem to be had. Now, Second, Indian economy. Indian economy में Indian economy handbook का second edition. So this is a book by Ketan sir. Ketan sir is a past ranker at UPSC Civil Services exam, and he's also your faculty for Indian economy at UPSCprep.com. So, well, this is something we have in our team, in that we have multiple rankers. I am there, Ketan sir is there, Shashank sir is there. All of us are rankers. We have people who have cleared or gotten to the interview stage multiple times. We have Nimish sir, who has cleared Punjab PCS twice, was a CISF assistant commandant, then he quit service, came from there, is now teaching modern history with us. So we have a very, very strong team. But the core idea is we keep providing these sorts of value addition material, and this is available to you for free, right? So if you want the PDF of this file, this is available to you for free on our Telegram channel. The link can be gotten from here. This is a 5-month plan that we generally share. So इसमें resource list we have made, right? यहाँ पे Indian Economy Handbook by Ketan sir. Click on this link and you should get the PDF file. Link for this I will share in the video description as well. Now, moving back to it, if you want the printed copy, you can get it from Amazon and Flipkart, and that is about it. If you do this book well, this is again a great resource. I'll just show you a copy of this book also. So this is just this thin. It is under 400 pages, and in that obviously there is some material in this book for even mains preparation. So overall, it's a great concise resource that really helps you understand Indian economy. Modern history की बात करें, modern history में spectrum is the thing. Now spectrum का, this is I think the 2023 edition. There is a 2025 edition now. The problem with spectrum is that every year it is getting more and more bulky, and currently it is 1,000+ pages. I don't know if it has gone up to 1,100 pages or so. If you get an older edition of spectrum, go for it. Best thing ever, क्योंकि I'll show you an older edition. Now this is an edition of the spectrum that I had for my last attempt 2020 में. This is a 2019 edition. If I had found an older edition, I would have gone for it. Why? Because modern history doesn't change all that much. So the basics that you have to cover, even if an older edition, you will be fine. The thing is that spectrum keeps getting retroactively updated. What does that mean? That every time prelims mein there is a question asked which is wild here and there, spectrum publication goes and retroactively includes that in an updated edition, so that it would seem like every question ever has been asked from this book. Not the case. Every year new questions will be asked which will not be in the book, but the basic questions, basics, you will be able to do completely from this book, right? Basics agar aapko kar liya hai, if you've done it, it's a great book. But if you can get older editions, now older editions might not always be available on Flipkart and Amazon, so you can get them from second-hand bookstores or elsewhere. If you don't get an older edition, this is what it is, right? Coming to ancient and medieval. Now ancient and medieval mein, these are the old NCRTs in a reprinted form by R.S. Sharma and by Satish Chandra. History of Medieval India and India's Ancient Past. Now if you get a old NCRT format of these, it will look like this, right? Slightly thinner books. These will be slightly thicker books, but then that is also because of the page quality and printing margins and all of those things. Content is the same in those books and in these books. So these will cover most of what you require for your ancient and medieval preparation. So ancient and medieval in Prelims 360 is taught by Rohan sir, and Rohan sir हमारे जो हैं, he is an expert at prelims or cracking. He has also cleared the forest ka cutoff, which is generally 20 marks above your civil services exam ka cutoff. So Rohan sir is also somebody who teaches this, and at the same time gives you an understanding of how you can eliminate, right? So elimination ke bare mein we'll also talk about in the later section, but in practice, reading is good, but reading is not enough. You also need to be able to apply that knowledge, as we had seen earlier. Now, art and culture ke liye, we have 3 NCRTs, very basic books. A book by Nitin Singhania, I don't want to recommend because it's too bulky. There is too much more information. For example, you have information about Indian handicrafts and Indian circus, and like a lot of things which are not exam relevant, are great for studying art and culture, but not exam relevant. Very exam relevant, that is all. Now, themes in Indian history, part 1 and 2 only. Part 3, we are not going to talk more modern history and art and culture in that phase, jo ki generally is not asked that much. And if you're already doing Spectrum, which is a bulky enough book, it will cover a lot of the modern history ka art and culture aspects. These will cover your art and culture for ancient and medieval, and this is about it. Now, history, I understand, has become a bit of a bulky subject. So therefore, naturally, there will be some sections which will be more important, some sections which will not be important. So that detail will come out with a more detailed video specifically for history later on. Now, moving on to geography. So this is my subject. There are 4 NCRTs, class 11th and class 12th. These form your basic source. Now this over here, India Physics, is the best NCRT of the lot. And this is something that you must, ingrain in your head. Try and remember as much as you can. And most questions from geography you should be able to solve based on this. Now, fundamentals of human geography, it is good, but India, people and economy, this is the more important one. So, priority order, number 1, number 2, number 3. Now, number 4. This book is good, but there is a bit of a problem with this book. The problem is that it condenses information a bit too much, right? For example, there is another great book which I will recommend, which is G.C. Leong. Now, G.C. Leong I recommend instead of this particular book. Why? Because the first half of G.C. Leong, which is about 90 pages, is condensed into one chapter, about 10 to 15 pages. Now you might, that is a great thing. That is obviously I'm going to do that. But if you go through those 15 pages, it will just go sar ke upar se, because it doesn't make sense. Geography, you need to see a lot of images to understand ki, okay, what exactly is going on. If you don't understand, it is just then too much information that I have to recall. And if I'm just focused on recalling information, it's going to get difficult. So instead of this, prefer this book. Now there is also another one version of G.C. Leong, which is black covered. If you have this version, this is also absolutely fine, or orange version, doesn't make a difference, but G.C. Leong for physical geography. Apart from that, we want the Atlas. Now Atlas ka, if you have the Orient Black Swan, or if you have the Oxford, or if you have some other school Atlas XYZ, most of the time doesn't make a difference. Get an Atlas and keep referring to it again and again. So jaise we talked about Ukraine ka and Russia ka resolution of conflict mein President Donald Trump has been forcing the countries ki, okay, give some territory. Go and look at the map. Where are those territories? What are those areas? What are the surrounding countries? These are the types of questions that are constantly asked in UPSC. When the Russia-Ukraine conflict started, very next year in prelims, there was a question on what are the countries which share a land boundary with Ukraine. If you'd looked at the map, you would have been able to solve it. Right. Now, coming to science and technology, you will need to read the class 11th and 12th ki biology books. But apart from that, there are a lot of other aspects such as nanotech, defense tech, right, which are there. Defense tech is definitely not there. Nanotech, biotech is a little bit there, but there are other aspects. So this is a great book for this. Isme bhi there has to be some reading. Now, apart from this, after your basic static subjects, abhi tak humne dekhe history, polity, economy, geography. Those were your static subjects. Now over here, as soon as we come, a lot of current affairs ka relevant will start coming up. That it is not just that I must know the basics, I must also be thorough with my current affairs, because as we talked about, Majorana 1 se related question aa jayega, vaccines se related question aa jayega in the years after the pandemic, because these were things that were constantly in news and being talked about. Similarly, so this is a class 12th bio, unit 10, ecology. So these 4 chapters you need to do, and then choose any one. Both of them are great books. You can choose. Doesn't matter. Latest edition, jiska bhi chalega, I don't care. Even if you have an older edition, most of the time it will not make a difference, because current affairs relevance is very, very high in this particular subject. If there is a new species which has been, let's say, jiska conservation status has changed, it has gone from, let's say, endangered to critically endangered. So that is something that I must pay attention to. If there is a species which has gone from critically endangered to not so, new site which has been declared under Ramsar Convention. These are all things that will be current affairs based, because no matter if like the edition comes out once a year, in 1 year a lot of things happen. So therefore, basics you can do from these places. Then it is more and more about current affairs. Now, finally, international relations ke liye, this is a book by Mr. Shyam Saran, who was a retired foreign secretary. He was 2004 onwards for a couple of years, and he has written a book about how India sees the world. Now, this is a primer. What do I mean when I say primer? That if you are absolutely new to current, international relations, so this will tell you what has happened till, let's say, I think this book came out in 2017 or 18. So from 1947 to 2017-18, last 60-70 years of India ka independence ke baad, whatever has happened will be covered in this book. It will tell you be India ka neighborhood relations and India ka great power relations, and what else is going on, how is India thinking about these particular problems. Once we have brought ourselves up to speed, then there will be a lot of current affairs that will be required. International relations mein, for example, no matter how quickly a book comes out, let's say if a book had come out early in 2025, it would still not contain that President Donald Trump has put tariffs, right, on 50% on India, when India is seen as a strategic partner. So these are things that are absolutely dynamic and therefore current affairs. Now, after this CSAT, there are a lot of very resources ki, okay, math ke liye you do this, that, XYZ. So instead, what we did, we created a workbook. This workbook has both theory and practice questions. Both theory and practice questions. And this is again one of those things that we are providing to you for free. PDF iska jo rahega is available to you for free. Where do you go? Again, the same sheet में आप आओगे resource list में CSAT workbook over there. You can get it from here. It'll take you to our Telegram channel where the PDF along with the solutions has been shared. Now we are also working on an updated version of this workbook, which will have some more questions, some better explanation of theory, some more images and so forth. As soon as we are done with the second edition, we will also share that with you for free. Why? Because we really believe that कि भाई some basic things, कहाँ पढ़ना है, क्या करना है, इसमें इतना ज़्यादा you shouldn't be worried about कि okay, I don't know where I need to do this from. CSAT workbook से कर लो. If this is not something that you want to do, then again you will have to go to math का NCRTs, you will have to do the English का grammar comprehension वाला some practice material, and that will be from multiple places. You can take up CAT का coaching material, this, that, XYZ. Still, workbook, best place, single place में you'll get all of math, logical reasoning and comprehension, and available for free in PDF format. Right, which brings us to current affairs. CSAT वगैरह वाली चीजें सारी हो गई, but like in the current science and tech, IR and environment, there's a lot of discussion about current affairs. So how much current affairs do I really need to do? What is the best way? Like, where do I get started? So a couple of things over here. Let's get started. How many months? So the general idea for this is UPSC follows a prelims to prelims cycle. Generally, whatever has been asked in prelims 2025 and between then from to prelims 2026, this is your info source from which you need to prepare. Meaning June 2025 onwards up till April, May ka current affairs are not that important. Why? Because obviously paper print okay, it will be transported and there will be some logistical delay in those things. So therefore, it is highly unlikely that a question or current affairs event which has happened in the month of May 2026 will be asked in your exam also. Highly unlikely. In 2025, however, we know that something that happened in Jan of 2025, right? क्योंकि 2025 prelims का current affairs का क्या रहेगा from 2024 June. So something that happened 5 was asked, which was the Indonesia in a particular international body. So you can check out that question, you can check out the timing. So therefore, effectively क्या रह जाता है? About 10 to 11 months. 10 to 11 months of current affairs you need to do from prelims 2025 to just before prelims 2026. Now, obviously, you can do a lot more. This is a very basic thing, and UPSC itself has not given a very hard, line over here. We will not ask anything before this. UPSC has not said this. This is something that we have found by observation for the last 15 years. You can do a lot more current affairs, but then there is the question of ki effort versus reward. The more current affairs you keep doing, higher will be your effort, but reward will not be as much, right? Ki bhai, let's say I'm putting zero effort to begin with. Effort versus reward for current affairs. Let's say I'm putting zero effort, obviously zero reward. Let's say I put 10 effort, I will get, let's say, maybe 8 reward. Now 10 ke baad, 10 months ke baad, agar if I've done till 20 months, get maybe 10 reward. Right? After a point, there is a lot of diminishing returns. Kyunki this is something that you have to understand about current affairs. If something is very important, it will be repeated. If there is a news item which was very, very important 5 years ago but has not been repeated since, it is not that important. But if it is something that is so important, it will be repeated again in the last couple of months, right? So that is the logic by which we're going. 10 to 11 months, if you more than sufficiently covered current affairs, 80 to 85% is what my target should be. If I'm covering this much current affairs, I am good to go. Beyond this, I can keep doing, but my output or the reward that I'm getting for the effort that I'm putting is not improving all that much, right? So which brings us to the question of how do you cover current affairs? Now the best method to do this is obviously that you read the newspaper, either Indian Express or the Hindu, whichever one you prefer, only one of them. Read the newspaper and make your own notes. Best way ever. But now if you're watching this video at this moment and you have not done this for the last 6 months, so it will be impractical for you to go back from June onwards and then start making notes of those things, because that is going to take a lot of time. This is something that must be constantly done and updated. If you've not done this, the second best method is monthly magazines. Now, there is another way in which you do compilations like PT365. Now, PT365 are compilations which become very, very popular and everybody sort of does them in FOMO. FOMO kya hai? Fear of missing out. Why? Because every year PT365 is this massive compilation, 1500 plus pages, and a lot of topics are covered. Ab isme naturally, because a lot of people are doing it, so therefore everybody else feels ki I will miss out on something if I'm not doing it. The problem with this is it's a great source of information, but it is too much. 1500 pages, if I have to do more, and then I have to revise this also a couple of times, because 1500 pages if I've done only once, I am not going to be able to use that in the exam. So therefore monthly magazines becomes a more manageable size, right? Each magazine will be maybe 80 to 100 pages. So overall, I may be doing 1000 to 1100 pages, still a lot, but only this much at a time. Feels a little more manageable. And then, like, I also need to make notes for this, because even this is 10,000 to 1100 pages, which I will not be able to revise if I'm doing all of it at once. So, monthly magazines हमने कर ली है. Monthly magazines का हमको output कैसे निकालना है? How do I make the best out of it? तो सबसे पहली चीज, which monthly magazine to follow? So at UPSCprep.com, we have recently come out with the core magazine. Now this is a magazine where we have tried to be comprehensive, meaning we've tried to cover each and every very important news piece that is relevant for the exam. We have tried to be very objective in that we have only kept a very separate section for mains. Most of the magazine will be focused on your prelims preparation, because that is where your current affairs is a lot more important. Mains ke liye is also important, but different kind of information is required. So it's a very objective, prelims focused. Then relevant. Now with PT365 and all of these other magazines is they try and dump as much information as possible, because they are trying to cover all the bases. Later on I can come and claim that everything was in my magazine. Yes, but your magazine was 1500 pages. So in such a case, naturally, we have tried to keep it relevant so that the page length is short. Like for example, the first magazine is about less than 70, 80 pages, less than that. Second magazine, slightly longer, but we will try and keep it very, very relevant and focused. And then finally, exam focused. Exam focused kya? what is important for the exam is what you will find over here. We will only cover what matters. That is what we promise with this magazine. And since a lot of people had been asking ki, okay, first magazine has started from October 2025, so what about from June onwards? So we will be coming out with monthly magazines from June, July, August and September. So these 4 other editions will come out over the next couple of weeks. The idea being September ke baad October, November, so this will continue. Every month we will be coming out with current affairs magazines, but also 4 extra we will come out with, so that your life becomes easier and you can only do these magazines and keep yourself updated with the most relevant information only. Now, there is another important thing over here, ki how do I make notes for current affairs? So for this, I'll show you something. Now, this is how I made, notes in my 6th attempt. Now, what is happening is, this is the monthly magazines that I used. You'll see over here that one of 34 pages. And one of 34 pages mein agar main jaun, so over here also you will see that couple of them are just your month ka pages. So 10 to 12 months ka agar current affairs we're doing 34 pages mein, so almost some of them 34 minus 12, because 12 क्या है, सिर्फ और सिर्फ this title page. तो overall in 22 pages I have condensed my entire current affairs ka reading material. Now this is something that will require constant effort. And how do you do this? Like for example, what have I done? I've just taken the index of the current affairs magazine, and इसमें अब क्या है, what I've simply done is in each of these, what I have done is right over here, I have made my small micro notes. Over here, Manipur tribes call a truce after decades of conflict, which is almost half a page, maybe, or 1 page in the actual write-up. What I've done is I've condensed that write-up into 2 lines. This is the most important part of that. The rest of it I can forget. I don't mind. It's absolutely okay. Right. Similarly, Ujala scheme, LED for all scheme, which aims to provide low-cost lighting to people. बोलने को अब half a page का ये था. I've condensed it into 2 lines. That is it. So if you do this sort of a thing, there are 2 advantages. One, you are engaging with the material, which means that overall you will have a better recall. And second, you are reducing time from future revisions. Future may I want to save a lot of time. Why? Because closer to the exam, when I have to revise 12 months of current affairs and then it is taking me 3 days, that is not good. 22 pages I can revise in 1 day, right? If my entirety of current affairs I can revise in just 1 day, and later on obviously even in half day, because the more I review this, the more multiple times I revise this, easier it will be for me to recall. So then I want to save time in the future. So therefore, this is how you can make your current affairs notes. Now, a lot of people generally ask you, okay, what is the software that I'm using? When I made these, I was using, Adobe PDF, and all I'm doing is selecting this word, right click and add a note. That is all that I am doing over here. Right. So before we go any further, one last thing that I want to share is, while general study subjects you're doing, you want to focus on doing the static subjects first, then the current subjects. In each subject, start with the basic books. Now, a lot of the times you'll hear the advice that you need to start with NCRTs. Yes, NCRTs are a great source and you should start with NCRTs, but the problem right now will be, if you're wanting to give an attempt at 2026, doing all of the NCRTs and then the basic books and then that, all of it will take too much time. Focus on the basic books, right? Then previous year questions, very, very important. Then tests and notes in that order. First, read the books, look at the previous year questions. Based on that and the tests that you give, you will update your notes. Don't make notes right after I've read the books. Why? Because if you don't have context of what is important, how do you understand what is important? Through previous year questions and tests. This information now goes into your notes. When you've understood ki, acha, what is important, then you make notes instead of then, because kya hoga, if you just read the book and then start making notes, you will recreate the entire book. Don't do that. Now, reading is obviously very, very important for you, but at the same time, you must review every now and then. Let's say at the end of each month, go back and look at ki, acha, what have I done in this month? What were the things that I said that I have to do, and what exactly has been done? Reviewing is a very, very important part of your UPSC journey, because this is the part where you will actually improve, where you will notice ki, acha, I had given myself 10-20 different targets and I'm only able to achieve 5 of them, or maybe I've achieved 15 of them. Okay, so that gives you some idea of how many targets do I need in the next month. Maybe you had told yourself that I will give this many tests, but you were not able to give them. So then next month you have some better idea of, okay, how do I do this better? This review, it can be a weekly review, it can be a monthly review. I would rather suggest you do both of them. Every week, Sunday ko sit down and see, okay, what have I done in this week? What did I say I will do, and what have I actually done? Will keep you on track a lot of the time. But at the same time, if you really do need feedback after all of this, don't hesitate to get feedback, because you are spending a lot of time and energy with civil services exam preparation. And if you feel it can be improved further, but you are not able to understand how you can do that, definitely go for some feedback. Let's talk about topper secrets. What are these things that the people who are clearing this exam know, which a lot of the times somebody who's not clearing, or somebody who's constantly stuck with what needs to happen, doesn't fully appreciate? So aisa nahi hai ki, these are just going to be some magical tidbits here and there, but these are important pieces and they need to be prioritized in that manner. Maybe you will know these things, but you might not be prioritizing them as much as is required, and that is what makes the difference. Because first and foremost, if we talk about, a lot of people nowadays in mentor calls elsewhere, they'll come to me and say, sir, ki after June, July, I was very, very motivated. I was doing a lot of study, but nowadays, last month or so, or Diwali onwards, 2-3 months are just, I'm not in the mood to study. Okay, who cares? Some people will be like, okay, I scored bad marks in the mocks and then 5 days I was not able to study. Some people will be like, I scored good marks in a mock and then I got too relaxed. So dekho, there is a key thing that people who clear civil services exam know, that motivation comes from action. If you are waiting to take action after you are motivated, you will not take action and you will break your consistency and you will not clear this exam. You need to take action daily. You need to show up on your desk. You need to do the work. If you do it, you will get motivated, you will see progress and you will move forward. But action comes first. You move and then motivation follows. This is something that you need to internalize. You cannot be ki aaj mood nahi hai to I will not be studying, or I got bad marks so I am going to be in a depressive state. No. You need to study without mood. You need to do the work whether you like it or not. And more often than not, what you'll realize is that once you start working, the mood changes rapidly. Our brain is not very, very, helpful in this. Our brain is a primitive hunter-gatherer brain, and what it does is it doesn't like effort. Studying is a lot of energy expenditure by the brain, and the brain feels ki, okay, this is not important for my survival, so therefore let us chuck it. It will give you 10 different reasons for कि अच्छा नहीं ये कर लेते हैं, अच्छा वैसा कर लेते हैं, ये कर लेते हैं. But once you get started, all of those reasons go away. But you have to get started. Motivation will not come for before you start. Now, इसमें there is also a core idea that people who are self-aware will also understand that एक तो ये part है which is आज mood नहीं है therefore I'm not studying. No, you need to be strong with yourself. But at the other end or the other extreme of this is the idea of burnout. Now, burnout is a situation where you are just constantly tired. Maybe you have not been sleeping enough. Maybe you are, pushing yourself harder and harder because you feel pressure. In such a situation, at times what can happen is I am not in my optimal state. I am not studying, even though I'm putting in the hours, I'm not gaining all the information. And if I'm feeling burnout, so then I also need to be a little lenient with myself. You need to practice a bit of self-compassion. Think of yourself as a lifelong learner. You are somebody who is going to constantly learn and improve. So the first thing that we talked about when we started this video, if you are an average student, sure, today you might be, but think of yourself more as a learner, that no matter what I am today, I will constantly learn and grow and improve. If you do that without being hypersensitive कि आज mood नहीं है, no, every day I am a learner. A learner doesn't need mood. We are constantly just learning things. If you do this, I can guarantee you 4 months later, 5 months later, you will be a very different person, somebody who is capable of clearing civil services exam. Now, second, planning and procrastination. Both of these things go hand in hand. And people who clear civil services exam are very well aware of both of these things. Now, if you are not planning, so there's a very famous quote over here that failing to plan is planning to fail. And it's very, very simple, that I need to be aware of what needs to be done when, what to do, and when to do it. So for this, naturally, we keep sharing these 5-month plans with daily targets and all of these sorts of things. So ये जो last plan हमने दिया था, this was started from the 15th of December. So if you want me to make a new plan for this, let me know in the comments and we'll do that. The idea here is कि we have given breakdown of कि on this particular day, 5th of January, you're supposed to be reading fundamental rights, right? Local governance on 15th of January, so on and so forth. The idea is simple, that if you follow this sort of a plan, you know or have a certain idea of कि अच्छा, I want to revise the entire syllabus 3 times and I should be able to do that. By first week of April, I will have done 1 reading. First week of May, 2nd reading. Last 2 weeks, I'll be doing my 3rd reading. So having that plan is essential. It's critical because it takes away some of the stress from you on an everyday basis. So please make sure you're planning. If not, you can obviously use that sheet. If you want me to make a new plan which is starting from, let's say, 1st week, 2nd week of January, let me know. I'll do that also. Now, second thing in this, taking breaks is part of the process. Breaks are essential because you are a human being, and a human being, if you're thinking I will have perfect efficiency, I will meet all of my targets always, you are setting yourself up for failure. If you have, let's say, a 90 to 95% achievement rate of okay, I showed up for this thing, I was able to do it 90% of the time, it is a success. You want to try and improve it as much as you can, get as close to 100% as you can, but also have a little bit of the self-compassion that we talked about over here. If it fails, don't be like you are a bad person, तुम्हारे बस की नहीं है, तुमसे नहीं होता, because a lot of us do that. We कोसो ourselves कि भाई तेरे बस की बात ही नहीं है, तू क्या करेगा, ये वो, and that sort of negative self-talk is not helping anybody. Which also connects to the second part, procrastination. Now, procrastination is something that all of us are, facing. We all procrastinate one way or another. Now, when somebody gets a handle on procrastination, that doesn't mean that they will never procrastinate again. What that simply means is that they know how they can control or manage procrastination. There will be some times, like for example, particularly अगर मैं अपनी बात करूं तो recently I made a video on how to get rid of your smartphone addiction, right? I gave a lot of good ideas. I do follow most of those ideas 90-95% of the time. Every now and then, sometimes when I've not eaten or just like too much work or something stress is there, I'm hungry, I'm not aware of the fact that I'm hungry, so then I know that on those days my phone usage spikes through the roof. Why? Because then it's very easy for me to give in to the temptation. So for you to be able to manage procrastination, you have to be aware of the fact that sometimes you will procrastinate, but in order to avoid doing that, you have to set rules. Okay, how do I do this? Where do I manage this? You can definitely check out that video on how to get rid of your phone addiction, because it will give you practical steps on that number one procrastination ko हटाने का tool. Use your phone less, add more friction, basic चीजें हैं, but details में you can check it out over there. Now, procrastination, another big problem that comes up with it is that we procrastinate because we are scared. Why? Either because I don't know how to do what I'm supposed to be doing, or I think I'm not capable of doing it. So I'm not capable of doing it wali cheez ke liye I've addressed earlier. Belief is something that's critical here. You cannot be कि भाई I don't believe I can do this and then you spend 5 months here. If you really don't believe that you can do this, why are you wasting 5 months here? Do something else. You have to believe that it is possible and you can do it. Without that, you're just wasting time over here. So first, that belief we want to address. Second is, a lot of the times it's scary ki, okay, I don't know how exactly to do this, which is where planning and procrastination go hand in hand. Having a plan is useful, but if your plan is so hard कि भाई अच्छा, if I miss today, rest of my plan is just going to go out of the window, is not a good plan, which is where taking breaks is an important part of the process, right? तो अगर इस plan में भी आप देखोगे तो every now and then we give you a break कि भाई 5 days 6 days a week you're supposed to work, Sundays are a break, बीच बीच में there'll be buffer days, and buffer days का फंडा क्या है कि देखो, you'll get sick, there'll be some emergency, things will not work out as you thought they would, and because of that, sooner or later I need some leeway. So having that leeway is something that's very, very useful, and all toppers know this. So whenever they're making a plan, they're taking into account that sometimes they'll procrastinate, but a lot of the times they're able to manage their procrastination better. If you're able to follow 95% of what you had decided, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do today, and do it, you're good to go. Don't expect perfection. Expect motion. काम करना है तो action लो, motion लो, things will improve. Number 3, engaged reading. A lot of the times people feel that I am just going to read this book, I'm going to read this book 3 times, 4 times, and that will be it. No, that is not how it works. A lot of the times, if we are looking at information, let's say this is the entrance to your brain, information will come here and then straight away it will go out. Why? Because I did not process that information. Processing is the core and critical part which effectively places that information in our memory, and then I can recall that piece of information as and when I require in the situations that I require. Because देखो, in the end, prelims is not a test of, you know, recall or anything. It is a test of using the information in your head under pressure. If you have 5 hours, 6 hours to solve prelims ka paper, a lot of more people will be able to solve it, but you have only 2 hours to do it. So therefore, it is under time pressure that I must make certain decisions, and that is the hard part. For that, I need to process the information, because otherwise क्या होगा? I will read something, थोड़ी देर वो ब्रेन के अंदर आया और यहाँ से फिर बाहर चला गया, then I'll read it again, फिर बाहर चला गया. Every time I'll read, it'll keep going out of my brain, and every time it'll keep feeling like अच्छा, I put in so much effort and then like I just keep forgetting it. Therefore, you need to do a couple of things, which is the processing part. Now, processing ke liye multiple things you can do. Number 1 obviously is priming. Now, for example, when I'm teaching geography, so geography mein I give pre-reading before class, 30 to 40 pages. I'll tell you ki, okay, this is what you're supposed to read before tomorrow's class, kyunki I need you to be primed for the information that we're going to discuss in class. What does priming mean? It's a simple idea that sometimes you might have noticed this is happening, that you learned a new word, and then suddenly that new word is everywhere. You see it on billboard, you see it in the newspaper, you see it on TV, you see it on YouTube, everywhere suddenly that new words start appearing. This is not that that new word is suddenly there everywhere, it was always there. Just that now your brain is primed to look at that information. So priming your brain is essentially setting it up for accessing कि अच्छा, this is what is important. अगर आप lecture देखते हो 2.5 hours का, तो having looked at that lecture without priming yourself, a lot of information will just glance off your head because you didn't think it was that important. But if you've read the chapter before you come to class, it will become that much more easier for, oh, okay, this is what that part in that section meant, and if this is being talked about in class, therefore it is important. Priming. Now, encoding ke liye there is a larger video that I've made by the title of, everything, how to remember everything that you've read, where we talk about the pacer method. The simple idea, I'll give you short version. कि भाई pacer method में there are different kinds of information. For example, CSAT is practiced procedural information. CSAT में क्या है? You have to solve particular questions, and there are steps to solve questions. You follow 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. If you know, you'll be able to solve this question. Solving that sort of a thing, or ensuring that sort of an information stays in your head, it is much more important that I practice it rather than just read about it. Think of it as कि if I am trying to learn how to make a dosa, what do you think is going to be a better way to remember how to make a dosa? Reading 5 recipes or trying to make a dosa a couple of times? trying to make a dosa will ensure that the next time you go back, you have that information in your head. So that is what P for procedural information ki CSAT. Similarly, A is for analogies, C is for concepts, and evidence and reference. तो ये जो detailed video है, you can check out on the channel. It is how to remember everything that you have read. Now, retrieval की बात करें, retrieval is the idea that एक तो I am putting material in my brain. Putting material in my brain के अलावा I also need to practice taking material out of my brain. कि भाई okay यहाँ से ये है, how do I take it out also? Because if you don't practice that, then we just are very used to putting information in, but the brain function for taking it out is not that well developed. This is where testing is very important. टेस्टिंग के अलावा एक्टिव रिकॉल. तो एक्टिव रिकॉल क्या है? लेट्स से we have been talking for about 40-45 slides right now. If you can pause this video at this moment and think back on the major sections that we had discussed in the video so far, if you can, that is active recall, right? For example, active recall अगर करके देखें तो we started this video with the end game. We talked about is it even possible to clear prelims in 5 months. Then we talked about the problem with civil services exam preparation. कि भाई issue क्या आता है and how are you supposed to approach it. Then we talked about the pattern of the exam. Pattern के बाद we talked about syllabus. Then syllabus and sources. इसके बाद we came to your courses. कि when you are selecting courses, how do you select those courses? Now we're currently at topper secrets. So this is effectively what we've done so far. Now I might have missed something. If I have, please do let me know in the chat. And then this is exactly what needs to happen. कि by doing this, what I've done is, अच्छा ये चीजें अभी तक हो गई हैं. If I've missed something or I clearly think I've missed something, I'll review it right then and there. This is retrieval practice, and if you do this, things will stick in your head much longer. Finally, interleaving. Interleaving is mixed practice. कि एक ही सब्जेक्ट सारे टाइम अगर आप करते रहते हो तो देन द ब्रेन गेट्स यूज्ड टू इट एंड द ब्रेन इज वेरी गुड एट फाइंडिंग शॉर्टकट्स फॉर थिंग्स दैट इट डजंट वांट टू डू. तो यू हैव टू शॉक द ब्रेन, यू हैव टू कीप इट ऑन इट्स टोज. इंटरलीविंग मीन्स कि भाई अच्छा सम डेज पे यू विल मिक्स 1 or 2 hours ऑफ CSAT प्रैक्टिस इन द मिडल, और इंस्टेड ऑफ जस्ट डूइंग कि भाई 8 hours 10 hours ऑफ पॉलिटी, half a day you've done polity and half a day you've done just practice questions. Mix the different kinds of practice that you can do. Don't just read and test. टेस्ट के साथ एक बार जस्ट ट्राई एंड रिकॉल, रिविजन को भी मिक्स करो. मल्टीपल थिंग्स दैट यू हैव टू डू, मिक्स देम ऑल टुगेदर एंड योर ब्रेन विल बी मच बेटर एट पुटिंग देम इनटू मेमोरी. Most toppers do this. They do engaged reading. They ensure that the information that is coming into their head once is not a disjunct piece कि भाई ऐसा अलग अलग pieces of information नहीं रखे हैं वो. The pieces of information are interconnected. And due to this interconnection, one piece can lead to another. Now, finally, physical and mental health. Now, this is where I'll show you some research that this is research done that aerobic physical activity to improve memory and executive function in sedentary adults without cognitive impairment. कि बहुत सारी studies have been done on this, that sedentary adults, people who don't move a lot, and what has been found, these are the highlights. Aerobic physical activity interventions had a large effect on memory, and aerobic physical activity interventions had a small effect on executive function. Executive function क्या है? Moving things around, some physical activity, that sort of a thing. But first point हमारा जो है, large effect on memory. US physical activity guidelines resulted in large effect on memory. US physical activity guidelines क्या है? 30 minutes of aerobic activity every day. Go for a walk. That's it. It will improve your memory a lot. In an exam where you're supposed to be remembering so many things, you should also be working to improve your memory, should you not? Second thing, this is effects of mindfulness. Meditation is a practice that I have been talking about for the last 5 years. I have been doing for the last 10 years. Why? Because meditation is something that really helps you stay calm and collected in any given moment. A lot of people think that, meditation is just sitting alone by yourself and doing nothing and maybe just like counting breaths or this that XYZ. No, think of meditation as training against distraction. In a world where we are so distracted, this is training your mind against distraction, because the most important part of meditation is not ki bhai, how long I can stay, ki bhai, acha, I was counting my breaths, how long can I count my breaths? No, you will lose focus, but how soon after losing focus do you come back to that focus state? That is what we are training for with meditation, and that is something very very essential. You will know this. Phone nikala, you wanted to do something, but because of a notification, now 2 hours later you are just like, you've been scrolling on your phone and padhai gayi bhaad mein. Doing a little bit of this is very very useful in realizing कि अच्छा no, I am doing time pass over here. 2 मिनट 4 मिनट हुए, चलो वापस आते हैं. Coming back to that focus state is the thing that meditation helps with. And even in this, there are some studies which in Taiwan these studies were done. Effects of mindfulness meditation course on learning and cognitive performance among university students in Taiwan. तो इसमें यहाँ पे देखेंगे, last lesson is what it is. This study showed that a 1 semester mindfulness meditation course was able to improve learning effectiveness and both attention and memory aspects of cognitive performance. If that is the case, so then physical activity and some mental fitness, these are things that you need to integrate into your routine. 30 minutes of physical activity, 15 minutes of meditation, if you can do on a daily basis, these 45 minutes will ensure better efficiency of the rest 8 hours of your day which you are spending studying. To ensure that you are spending these much more effectively, you need to spend these 45 minutes every day. If you do this, you will notice a difference and you can come back and thank me later. Now, let's come to the next section where we discuss anything and everything about test series. Sabse pehle, there is the big question that, how many tests should I give? When should I give tests? And then obviously there is also this aspect of previous year questions. Everybody keeps talking about I have to do previous year question ka analysis. So, like, what is exactly that analysis and what are we supposed to figure out from there? So let's discuss all of these things. First and foremost, basic principles: when, where, and how many. Whenever you finish a subject, let's say you have done polity, you can start giving a polity section test. Don't wait to give tests till okay, when I've done all of the subjects and then I'll give a test. Test is a diagnostic tool. Diagnostic tool for what? For finding out our weaknesses, for finding out errors, issues in my understanding of the subject, or maybe I just don't remember anything, or maybe I don't understand the concept, whatever it is. The faster you diagnose the problem, the better it will be for you, because then I will have more time to make corrections. So as soon as you are done with any one subject, try and give a test, section test if you don't want to give a full test. After one round of reading of all subjects, let's say that by end of March, early April, which is something that we had given in the plan, right? So इस plan के हिसाब से अगर हम चल रहे हैं, assuming, so by first week, second week of April, I'm done with the first reading of all my subjects. So by that logic, first week, second week of April, उससे पहले थोड़ा थोड़ा you can start giving your full tests, but definitely full test वहां से तो देने शुरू करने ही हैं. उससे पहले keep giving section tests, उससे पहले keep trying previous year questions and keep trying to diagnose what are the issues. Second thing, how many? Now, there is no fixed answer. The idea is simple, that I should give a few tests for each section and at least 4 or 5 full tests in order to understand ki, okay, how am I performing? Beyond that, it's a personal choice, right? And that's what I've given. 1 to 2 tests per subject. So let's say ki bhai, bare minimum, if I'm saying ki bhai, how bare minimum, how many tests should I give? 1 test per subject. You have 6 subjects, 6 tests, and then 4 to 5 full tests. 10 tests mein you are like more than good to go. Now, isme obviously you can add 1 or 2 CSAT ka section tests, or you can 4 or 5 full test mein 1 or 2 CSAT ka. So 10, 11 tests is what it is. More based on how you perform in these tests. If you are having problems, if you're not scoring well, so then there is a problem. We need to diagnose the problem, and then based on that, we need to check again whether that problem was solved. So number of tests can keep on increasing. Now, there is an alternative school of thought जहाँ पे क्या होता है कि instead of classes, we are only focused on read, test, review, and repeat. Now, this is especially true for people who have, let's say, given attempts before, or who already know some of the basics of ki bhai, acha, this subject I know, I don't really need the classes. So in such a case, you just read based on कि भाई what I'm supposed to be doing, test it, review the test, review your mistakes, make a note of those mistakes, and then repeat, read the next thing, test again. So for example, on this note also, we have created a new course called the Prelims SIP. Now, Prelims SIP is just a test-based course. There are no classes in this course because this is a course which is primarily aimed at people who want to do self-study and don't want classes, just want regular testing, and on top of that, mentorship. So that is that. But even if you're not joining any course, it is very, very important that you review the test. Because if you're not reviewing the test, you're not learning from your mistakes. And if you're not learning from your mistakes, all of this is just wasted effort. Constantly keep in mind that this is something that very early on from this video we have been talking about, कि action will lead to motivation. And here, review of that, action is going to help you make that action better the next time that you do it. So this is a constant process that is to keep going on with civil services exam preparation. You do something, you find out based on a test, ki bhi, acha, how did you do that something? Based on that test, you learn, okay, ki bhi, these were the mistakes, I don't want to repeat these mistakes, and then you give that test again. Read, test, review, repeat. तो बेसिक चीजें ये हमें चलते रहना है. We have to keep doing that. You have to keep learning from your mistakes. If you do this, 5 months is enough. You can clear prelims in this. Now, coming to previous year questions, and then we'll talk about test analysis. Previous year questions की बात करते हैं सबसे पहले. First and foremost, the importance of previous year questions is that it tells you what are topics that are quite frequently asked. For example, there'll be one question related to oceans from the geography section almost every year. In the last 5 years, I think 2022 was the one year where there was no question related to the oceans. 2020 में आया है, 21 में आया है, 23, 24, 25. Every year, one question related to the ocean. So this is a topic that I know that I will prepare well. Similarly, Buddha. Every year, one or two questions, and this is not just last 5 years, this is maybe the last 10 years, 15 years. Every year there will be a question related to Buddhism, Jainism. So therefore, previous year questions का सबसे बड़ा aspect is that it tells you what topics are constantly getting repeated, and therefore those are your most important topics for any given subject. Right? This is the first one. Let's come to the second thing. It also gives you a sense of, okay, what are the kinds of options that I'm going to get in the MCQ. MCQ is your multiple choice question. So there are multiple ways in which the choices are given. Like for example, some of these choices are given, 2 statements are given, 1, 2, both, neither. Then 3 statements are given, and these sorts of options are given. So now these are few. This is quite prominent, मतलब ऐसे 10 to 15 questions आपके आ जाते हैं. This is less than 10 questions of this sort. More and more you're getting these sorts of assertion reason type questions. Assertion reason type question आपका क्या है? Where I'm given 2 statements and then I have to relate the 2 statements. First I need to tell कि अच्छा both statements are correct or false, and if they are correct, तो is statement 2 a correct explanation of statement 1? So that is assertion and reason. उसी का एक वेरिएंट है where 3 statements are being given. So this is also a very frequent, I think 2025 में this became a very big thing. And then you have these sorts of questions which are again 10 to 15 of these sorts of questions. जो UPSC came out with the idea that they wanted to eliminate elimination. Now, elimination is something that is effectively just logical reasoning in the exam hall. So you cannot eliminate it, but because of that, obviously there is pressure कि भाई अच्छा, you cannot guess here, right? Guessing का क्या मतलब है यहाँ पे? That for example over here, if 2 is wrong, you know that 2 is wrong, which is not the case here. I'm just telling you as an example. Then I know that these 2 statements are not going to come. It's either A or D in case that is the way to go. So इस type के statements में it is much easier for me to eliminate. Similarly, if I know any one of the statements over here, 2 of the options get eliminated. So that ways elimination was something that a lot of times was helpful. But nowadays with these sorts of options and questions, that is getting reduced. Still, there is some scope for it. Logic hamesha will be useful. Logic for statements like, all species do X, or let's say some species do Y. So whenever these sorts of extreme statements are given, I need to look at them with a little bit of doubt. I'm not saying that they are always going to be correct or wrong, but I must look at them with a certain amount of doubt, because in nature there are always some exceptions. So then all species do X, probably wrong. Some species do Y, probably correct. So similar idea say there are a lot of logical reasoning that you can do in the exam hall. And previous year questions are obviously great for this. Why? Because they tell you the topics where you need to be a little more prepared, which makes it easier to do that in those particular topics. Now, at times, UPSC gets lazy, and you will see that these two questions over different years of prelims are pretty much the same question. So ऐसा नहीं है that this has happened just once, it has happened multiple times. मतलब this is a question which is like almost very similar, language थोड़ा सा different है. At one time it has also happened that they've just repeated everything, मतलब word to word they have repeated. It was a question from economy, so you can check it out, you can google it, you will find this question as is repeated. So therefore previous year questions are also giving you direct marks. Please do that. On top of that, what you also get from previous year questions is more places where your attention should go. So if you remember, we talked about priming. So here, what is this question doing is black gram can be cultivated as both Kharif and Rabi. Green gram alone accounts for half of pulse production. Right. So in this question, we know that this statement is wrong. This statement is wrong. तो हमारे पास एक ही option बचता है, which is the correct answer over here. But given मेरे को correct answer मिल गया, I have taken marks, whatever it is. Now, if I'm preparing for next year, I will still look into detail. Okay, if green gram accounts for nearly half of pulse production, doesn't account for half of pulse production, what does? Is there any particular pulse which is accounting for maybe 40-45%? Or in the last 3 decades, while the production of Kharif pulses has increased, the production of Rabi pulses has decreased. So this is also one of those statements which is saying, maybe 30 years mein, Kharif has gone this way, Rabi has always gone this way. So then this also seems like a very extreme statement in this particular case. But where has it gone? Generally ऐसा है क्या? या कुछ और है? So these questions are also giving you another area that I now need to pay attention to. Next time that your economic survey comes out, go and look at this data, because this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. A lot of the times you'll get defense se related questions mein wrong statements. So then it is your job to then go and find out what are the right statements. Do this work, and that will give you such great dividends, because UPSC भी कैसे questions बना रहा है? UPSC is making questions by giving a lot of the previous year questions to paper checkers. These are the quality of questions that we want, and on the basis, a lot of the times the previous questions ka options end up becoming full questions in future years. So therefore, if even you have found the right answer, always pay attention to the options from previous year questions and then go and read about them more. Now, Prelims SIP obviously is one of that course which is really aimed at helping you, imbibe that read, test, revise, repeat. Isme obviously will be mixing some previous year questions every here and there, so that that part also gets addressed quite a bit. So in this course, what we're doing is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you have mini tests. Daily basis pe you'll be given a reading and you'll be giving mini tests of 25 questions each. On Sunday, you will be giving a full length test. Mondays ko there are no tests. तो Monday का जो reading material आपको दिया जाएगा और the prescribed reading will be tested on Tuesday. Tuesday का will be on Wednesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The idea of this course is pretty simple. That intensive testing, strategic intensive practice, that is the SIP. तो होगा क्या? That by this intensive practice, you will get a sense of कि अच्छा where is that logical reasoning sort of working, because a lot of time people don't practice enough. So if you practice enough, every day you're doing 25 questions, you will have practiced enough that logical reasoning, you will not have to go elsewhere and figure out what are the elimination tricks. You will have learned them by yourself. Right. Strategic क्यों? Because this will aim to get your entire syllabus covered by first, second week of April. Again, important because you need second or third round. And finally, there is a critical element here of consistency. Right. In this course, there are two things to help you maintain consistency. Number one, there is a deadline. In the deadline, let's say ट्यूसडे का आपका जो टेस्ट है विच इज बेस्ड ऑन मंडे की रीडिंग, तो ट्यूसडे का टेस्ट विल बी अवेलेबल फ्रॉम 8 AM to 10 PM only. And the idea of this is pretty simple, that if you are not giving the test by this deadline, you will not be counted for your consistency rankings. We want you to be consistent, and consistency ranking जब दिखाई देती है तो then it's obviously something that motivates you कि okay, you are competing with good serious candidates, and therefore मतलब I should also try and put my level best effort. The second thing, we will be following up bi-weekly, just like in Prelims 360. Every 2 weeks we will be checking in on you. If you've not been giving tests, if you've not been scoring well, or if you're facing any particular problems, we will check in on you to see what issues you're facing so that we can resolve them. That is going to really help you stay focused and consistent. Third, which is based on belief. We really do believe that if you are this consistent, if you give all of the tests that are in Prelims SIP, you are going to clear Prelims. For that reason, the top 5% most consistent candidates in this course, we are going to give them our mains courses for free. Right, that is the amount of belief that we have in this course. So for more details, you can visit courses.upscprep.com. Now coming to the review section. Test series के बारे में हमने बात कर ली कि कब टेस्ट देना है, when, where, how many tests, importance of previous year questions. So now let's look at what to do after you give a test. For this, let's look at these two questions. These are from previous year prelims questions. In the northern hemisphere, the longest day of the year normally occurs in like ABCD. Right, naturally you will know this answer because this is something that we've been studying since class 6, right? Basic. But think back to the levels of knowledge that we talked about. This is the base level of remembering. Now look at this question, which is I think from 2025. On June 21 every year, which of the following latitudes experience sunlight of more than 12 hours? Concept वही है. Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, sunlight, how many hours in a day? Concept वही है. This is a remembering based question, and this is a application of concept. So these are two types of questions that are frequently asked in prelims: a conceptual question and a factual question. So based on how we are giving tests, we need to look at factual questions and conceptual questions slightly differently. Now these are more examples of factual questions. Okay, which of the following have been constructed as greenfield projects? Will be related to current affairs / geography. So if you know, if you've been following the news, you might be able to do it. But again, this is a very factual question. Similarly, if we look at this question, how many of our above are deciduous trees? Given in the NCERT, directly given in the NCERT, but very factual. Now let's look at some conceptual questions. With reference to water vapor, which of the following statements are correct? तो यहाँ पे क्या है? Maybe I've read about the water vapor, but I now need to apply my knowledge, concept based. So even if I don't remember exactly कि अच्छा atmosphere में कहाँ तक जाके water vapor मिलता है या नहीं मिलता, I can make some sense of it. It is a gas, the amount of which decreases with altitude. So I remember कि atmosphere में as you go up, temperature falls. If temperature is falling, if temperature is in the negative, water vapor is going to condense. So therefore, makes sense that water vapor will be more at lower heights. Even if I don't know the exact thing, I know statement 1 should be logically correct. Its percentage is maximum at the poles. Similar logic, at the poles the temperature is in the negative. तो क्या रहेगा? Water vapor, whatever is in the air, will condense and fall down as snow or whatever. So should the percentage be maximum at the poles? No, not really. So then I know for here, correct answer is this. Even if I don't know the exact thing, logically I can come to this. This is what I call a conceptual question. Similarly for this, concept, you walk your way through the logical reasoning and you will arrive at the answer even if you don't remember everything about the thing. Now this is exactly what you have to figure out in test review, that you will make some conceptual errors and you will make some factual errors. So if you are making conceptual errors, that is a red flag. It is a big red flag and you really need to address it. It indicates that you have issues with understanding of that particular subject. If you are doing a lot of conceptual errors, I've shown you examples of conceptual and factual questions for this very reason, so that you have some sense of it. The more you practice, the better you'll be at identifying these sorts of differentiations. If you are making conceptual mistakes, a lot of conceptual mistakes, that means you need more reading and more practice. However, if you're making some factual mistakes, कि भाई आपको नहीं याद था कि भाई GDP का exact growth rate, this, that, what it was, some of it I will have to tolerate. It's fine. If there are too many, meaning every factual question that I mark, I am getting it wrong, so maybe I need to look at, should I be attempting that many questions? Should I be attempting that many questions ke saath saath? If only, let's say, 40%, 50% of your factual questions are wrong, I'll tolerate that. If conceptual errors are more than 20%, meaning I attempted 50 questions, 50 conceptual questions, of which 10 were wrong. So that means I really need to pay more practice, pay more attention to reading. Because here, if you're making errors, you are out of the race. Here, everybody is going to make errors. So therefore, it is okay. I will tolerate it. These are the bonus marks. Right? तो टेस्ट में ये दो कोर डिफरेंसेस को आपको नोट करना है. Whenever you're reviewing a test, I want to reduce conceptual errors as much as possible. Reduce and tolerate. Now, at times there will also be something called silly mistakes. Silly mistakes क्या होती है कि I misread a statement. Right? Either I was in a rush or maybe focus नहीं था, प्यास लगी हुई थी, घंटी बज गई, something happened and because of which I lost focus and then I misread a statement. Maybe it was saying something, I read something else because of which I marked it wrong. होता है, ऐसा भी होता है. Sometimes the question is asking you to mark the incorrect statements, but I was so confident that I know this answer that I marked the correct, all correct wala answer option, which will always be an option in those types of questions. In such a case, that is a silly mistake, and that also we need to reduce absolutely. So test analysis करते हुए always make sure that you're trying to understand कि which category of mistake you're making, and based on that we will review or come back to it. Now, another thing which I think we missed earlier, which now let's talk about, attempting questions. How many questions should I attempt in a given test or in, let's say, the final exam? There are many schools of thought on this. Some will be as many as you can, and which generally then tends to mean that 90 plus, so I have to attempt. There is a second school of thought which focuses on high accuracy. These will be people who will attempt maybe 55, 60 questions only, but they will get most of them right. Now, this is an example of Giri Shankar, who has a podcast on this channel itself. You can go and check that out. So Giri Shankar in his podcast told us that Giri Shankar is an IAS officer. He told us that he attempted only 55 questions. He got 2 wrong. 53 questions correct. Got, great, cleared prelims, went through. On the other hand, every year you will see people who are, attempting 90 plus questions. And isme se then there is a tolerance for error, that they'll get, 65 to 70 correct and then 20 to 25 incorrect. So this is like a high tolerance for error, that you will make mistakes. You are taking a chance, but you have based that chance on your understanding of how you attempt the paper, which is where this question gets resolved. You have to, by giving multiple tests, figure out what works better for you. If giving 90 plus or attempting 90 plus is getting you low marks, for the next couple of tests, I want you to attempt less. Limit yourself forcefully, only attempt 70 questions. Pressure लगेगा, एक बारी ऐसा लगेगा कि अगर if I'm only doing 70 questions, I will not clear because I will make mistakes. Sure. But so long as I don't try it, I'll never find out. And that is what you want to figure out. What is your sweet spot? Now, this is, I'll tell you a personal story. When I was giving Prelims 2020, 6th attempt hai, I've been selected twice, this, that, XYZ. Prelims 2020 till that time was one of the toughest prelims paper. And SMA, while I'm sitting in the exam hall, I just got blown away because on the first page itself, I saw 4 or 5 questions which I did not know. I turned second page, again 4 or 5 questions I don't know. Now keep in mind, this is me who has given 5 attempts before this, gotten selected, and 10 question prelims ke 100 mein se the first 10 questions I don't know. I don't know anything at all. Like anybody in their right mind would start doubting themselves कि भैया ये तो गया, this is gone, another, like this last attempt, like that golden chance that I had to redeem myself XYZ is now wasted. And obviously in that moment, while all of those thoughts are going on in my head, I just took a deep breath, because meditation had taught me to stay calm in those moments. And as soon as I took a deep breath, I looked up, and as I looked up, I saw that सबके मुंह पे 12 बजे हुए हैं. In my room there were about 10-15 candidates other, and everybody had like, sheer panic on their face, that is like, what the hell is this paper? And in that moment I realized ki if it's hard for me, it is going to be hard for everybody. I have prepared, I know these things, so if it is hard, it's going to be hard. So usually my strategy used to be that I would be attempting, in the 80 to 85 questions ka range. This is what I would usually attempt in the tests, and leading up to that year in most of my prelims, this is where I've attempted questions. In that prelims I attempted 73 questions, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't. I did not know what else to do, and because of this I was very very stressed out कि भाई अब तो गया, मतलब ये तो होने से रह गया, because like I've only attempted this much, I was supposed to attempt that many, I've not done 10 questions, I'm not clearing the cutoff. Eventually ended up clearing the cutoff by 20 marks, right? So what is the point of all of this? That there is no sure short way कि इतना questions करना ही है. You have to figure out where your sweet spot is. If the paper is hard, and how will you know if the paper is hard? If you've put in the effort for 5 months, if you've done the reading, if you've done the studying, the moment you sit in the exam hall, you flip through the paper, you will understand whether it's a hard paper or an easy paper, right? If there are more conceptual questions, it is going to be relatively easier side pay. If there are more factual questions, it is relatively on the harder side. So based on that first assessment, while you sit in the exam hall, you will have a sense of whether it is a easier or a harder paper, and based on that you can vary how many questions you're supposed to attempt. Don't go with a fixed idea that no, I have to attempt 90 questions or it is all gone and wasted, because the moment that thought comes in your head while you're in the exam hall, this is gone and wasted, your mind will constantly go there. एक क्वेश्चन नहीं होगा गॉन एंड वेस्टेड, मतलब दो चार क्वेश्चन गलत लग रहे होंगे कि भाई ओ शिट समथिंग रॉन्ग हैज हैपेंड, लाइक गॉन एंड वेस्टेड. तो डोंट गो देयर, focus on your best and rest will be fine. So now let's come to the most important part, which is, should I be making notes? Now current affairs ke liye definitely you should be making notes, that we've discussed in the current affairs section itself. But rest of it, general studies ke liye, CSAT ke liye, obviously where do I make notes, and is it even important for prelims to make notes? For this, there is something that you need to understand. There are some basic principles. First and foremost, what exactly do you note? Note making will serve different purposes. Number one, for current affairs, it will be something that will help you retain a lot of the facts. I also want you, or you also should make notes for the mistakes that you make in tests, so that you don't repeat them all over again. Right? Just thinking ki I've read this once and then I won't repeat these mistakes again, not going to happen. Whenever you're giving tests, and if you give a lot of tests, so then this is becoming more and more important. The more tests you give, the more you should note down ki, okay, this minor mistake I did, this I did not understand, so that your gaps in knowledge or your blind spots are adequately covered. Mains ke liye, obviously you need analytical notes, but that is not something that is within the scope of this video, so we will skip that aspect. Now, organization की बात करते हैं, and overall need की बात करते हैं पहले एक बार. Prelims में particularly, I feel that you really don't need to make notes. Let's say for geography की अगर हम बात करते हैं, because that's my subject, you are doing some basic NCRTs. If you have done the basic NCRTs well, you will not need to make a lot of notes. I'll tell you why. Because let's say we're doing India physical environment. Now this is a great NCRT for doing, India based. Now what have I done? Let's say for example, there is this chapter number 3 on drainage systems. Now it might not be visible to you, so I'll just do this. Right, chapter number 3 on drainage systems. Now इसमें क्या कर रखा है? That there are a lot of rivers given over here, and what I've done is Indus system का जो rivers हैं यहाँ पे, right next in the margins I've written the important information ki where are these rivers originating, and if there is any other sort of, what are the antecedent rivers I've written down over here. So this NCRT I can just flip through, and what I will have done is, just by flipping through this 100-page NCRT in maybe 1 or 2 hours, I will have reviewed all that there is to review. So for this particular reason, let's say geography की बात करते हैं, तो geography में you don't really need to make a lot of notes. Mapping में rather try and practice the maps instead of making notes कि अच्छा what are the important regions in this place. No, take out a map, point them out on the map. That will be much more useful for you. Similarly, अगर polity की बात करते हैं, तो Lakshmikant itself is in notes format. So what more notes are you going to make for that? Maybe, okay, one thing that you can make notes from Lakshmikant is comparative tables, but this is more of engaged reading. So if you remember engaged reading में where we were talking about कि भाई pacer system, तो pacer system वाला video when you go and check out, whenever you're doing concepts, you want to cross reference them with other concepts. तो comparative table क्या है? Let's say I have done union government. So now state government is just union government with some minor changes and some minor updates. If I make a comparative table, I will very clearly see ki where are the differences, and then as soon as I make that table, that thing will get stuck in my head. So these sorts of comparative tables definitely make, now not just for union and state governments, between your sort of constitutional bodies, your statutory bodies, wo entire section of 80 to 100 pages in Lakshmikant, you can condense that entire section into maybe 1 or 2 pages. Ki acha, let's say we're talking about any particular body, let's say National Commission for Backward Caste or National Commission for Women. Who appoints them? What are the relevant articles? What are their powers? What is their mandate, and who can remove them? What is the tenure? ये 4 5 6 चीजें अगर मैंने एक टेबल में डाल ली, 10 15 20 bodies over the course of 100 pages in Lakshmikant will be condensed into that one single table. And आज की डेट में if you're being extra lazy, you don't even have to do it yourself. You can ask AI to do it. But rather, I would say if you are doing this, do it by hand, because in the process of doing that organization, things will stick in your head. So these sorts of notes, if you make for prelims, absolutely great. But beyond that, making notes of entire Lakshmikant, I don't think is required for prelims. Similarly, geography के लिए entire notes for prelims not required. Most subjects के लिए for prelims, you don't need to make a lot of notes. Current affairs के लिए definitely, test mistakes के लिए definitely. These places definitely make notes. Even in them, they should be organized as per the topics of the syllabus. Now, current affairs के लिए we had done indexing, but if you are making notes not in the index and elsewhere, you are making your own notes in some, let's say, notebook or in some, let's say, digital format, but not in the index of the files themselves, then don't organize them as per month. Organize them as per the syllabus or the subjects. कि पॉलिटी के नोट्स शुड ऑल बी एट द सेम प्लेस. इट शुड नॉट बी कि अक्टूबर का पॉलिटी का नोट्स अलग है, देन नवंबर का पॉलिटी का नोट्स अलग है, देन मार्च का पॉलिटी का नोट्स अलग है. नो, it should all be one single note, polity, everything in there. Month, maybe if you want, inside that polity note. Hierarchy changes. So these are some basic things that you have to keep in mind while making notes, particularly for prelims. Now finally, even here, there is an aspect of review. If you are not reviewing your notes every so often, then like there is no point of making those notes. The entire idea of making notes is that it makes my life easier in the future. So it is a constant process. You have to keep reviewing those notes so that you can make them better. There are some new things that you learned that were not in your notes. You keep adding to them, keep subtracting from them, so that they become the very, very important things that save you time in the future. So if these things you can do, they'll be great. But otherwise, I don't think prelims ke liye you don't need particular notes. So that brings us to revision. Now, revision की जब हम बात करते हैं तो revision when, where and how. So first and foremost, I want you to look at something called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. Ebbinghaus is the name of the person who did the study. And the idea of this study is pretty simple. That let's say I have read something. I have 100% remembered something today. By tomorrow, I will already have forgotten 50% of it. Let's say I then review it second time. Next day, I will have forgotten it still, but I will retain a little more. फोर्थ डे पे एक और बार मैं रिवीजन करूंगा, थोड़ा और कम भूलेंगे. तो इफेक्टिवली क्या आता है, इफ यू कीप रिव्यूइंग थिंग्स, माय मेमोरी ऑफ इट ओवर टाइम विल फॉलो दिस कर्व. अदरवाइज इफ आई जस्ट रीड इट वंस एंड देन डोंट लुक एट इट अगेन, विद इन 5 days I'll remember less than 1/4 of it, and within 30 days I will have forgotten most of it. So what is the idea? This is not your problem alone. A lot of people feel that I read something and then I forget. No, everybody does. This is how the human brain works. So therefore, we must bring protections and we must build a structure against our very human brain that we do not forget and we retain information for as long as possible. For this, again, there are some principles. Now principles का क्या मतलब है यहाँ पे, that you can apply these principles in any way that you want. I will not be giving you कि नहीं ऐसे ही करना है. There are many ways to apply them. So the couple of things you want to keep in mind over here. Inbuilt revision. Let's say have 1 hour every day, or maybe 4 or 5 hours in a week, or maybe couple of days in a month. What is the idea? Let's say I'm only doing revision once on Sundays, but every Sunday I'm going to review Monday to Saturday, whatever it is that I have done, I will try and review. So Sunday ko 6 to 7 hours of reading you will be doing. You can also do it in another way. That okay, every second day, third day, I will review everything that I have done in the last 2 days. So this should be built into your schedule. You can do it via tests. You can do it by active recall. You can do it by running the concepts again in your head. Ki, okay, I learned about Coriolis force. What exactly is Coriolis force? Coriolis force is because of the relative motion of the Earth at the poles, the rotation will be faster at the equator. It will be different. So uski wajah se there is some difference in the perceived movement of objects on the Earth. Run it through in your head. Try and explain it to somebody. If you can explain it, great. If not, time for you to review again. So if you have this sort of a system built in कि regular basis पे आपका review होता जा रहा है, life will become easier. Now, notes obviously are helpful over here, but as we talked about, prelims के लिए it is much easier if I just flip through the book again. Why? Because very fact heavy, a lot of information is there, but at the same time, because I flip through the book, what I'll see are some images. Notes जब भी हम बनाते हैं तो may not always have the images that are very very useful in the books. Particularly, let's say geography में GC Leong is a great book for this. So whenever I'm reading some particular topic, I'll also see कि अच्छा there is a graph given कि these are the areas where this kind of weather patterns are found. So I was trying to remember कि what is the vegetation type in this weather pattern. Now I've also once more looked at the graph, so therefore interconnection मेरे को और थोड़ा strong हो गया. So that is obviously useful. But notes of your, let's say, test mistakes, which are repeatedly viewed, will also be very, very useful. Finally, active recall is going to be your superpower. Now, for example, I think around at 45-ish slides, we did a basic exercise of active recall where we looked at what are all the things that we have talked about in the video so far. You can pause the video right now and do that exercise again. Since that 45th slide, we are now almost at the 70th slide. What are all the other things that we have talked about? What are the sections? If you missed a section, maybe go back and check what was that section. This sort of active recall you have to do in your chapters. Let's say geography का 10 page का आपने एक chapter पढ़ा. Just at the end of that chapter, think about okay, what are the different subheadings in this chapter? क्या क्या चीजें थी? Let's say weathering and weathering and erosion का chapter I was doing. So then, okay, what are the different kinds of weathering? There is physical weathering, there is chemical weathering, there is biological weathering. Biological weathering is pretty much part of some type of physical and chemical weathering itself. Now, erosion की हम बात करते हैं तो number one, what is the difference between weathering and erosion? कि weathering is generally an in situ process, meaning it will happen right where it is. Erosion is also breakdown of material, but then it also involves a component of transportation. So erosion की जब हम बात करते हैं तो then erosion will be, let's say, erosion by water, erosion by ice, erosion by wind, right? So basic all of these things I've run through my head. Maybe there are a couple of things about erosion that I could not recall fully. So right at this moment, I want to go and check in that chapter कि अच्छा erosion और किसी type का था क्या? Wind, water and ice. Anything else? If I'm missing, let me know in the comments. But this is exactly how you want to do active recall so that अच्छा कोई problem हुई, कोई issue हुआ, तो right then and there you have sort of stuck it in your head. This is the most important thing that you can do. Whenever you complete a chapter, try and summarize it in 2 minutes in your head. You do this one thing and everything else is secondary to this. ये एक चीज अगर आप करते हो ना तो then what you're doing is you're engaged reading. जो पहले हमने बात करी थी, engaged reading का सबसे important part यही है that I try and think about all of that information and then try and organize it in some manner. As soon as you do it, your brain takes note, and that is what we want to do. Now, please keep in mind that revision after a while gets absolutely boring. You might have made some mnemonics ki acha, some countries around this particular sea I want to remember, so I've made a mnemonic for that. I've made some other mnemonics for that. After a while, I've made so many mnemonics that I've forgotten, like, okay, how many mnemonics are there? So it will get boring. and you will have to figure out how to make it interesting for yourself. This can be done through I make flashcards. Flashcards क्या है? Just small pieces of paper you've kept. उन पे एक side पे you've written, let's say, the mnemonic. Other side पे you've written the answer, and then you keep reviewing the flashcards every now and then. If, let's say, we're talking about review of concepts, so then try and make mind maps of that concept. Try and talk to ChatGPT and try and understand ki, okay, how am I doing this? What am I doing? How can I improve? So these sorts of things you have to constantly figure out for yourself, because it will get boring when you're doing the same subject, same concept for the 4th, 5th, nth time. Which brings us to consistency. Now, consistency is a very, very important aspect in your journey, and like this is one of the core reasons why that we have that bi-weekly check-in in our courses for prelims. Because if you can maintain just consistency, you have a very good shot at making a lot of progress, maybe even clearing the exam. You need things more than consistency, but without consistency, none of the other things work. Right? Now, consistency is what you called a necessary thing. Right? It is almost sufficient. Just maintain consistency, just read on a regular basis, you will have great progress. थोड़ा सा उसमें डायरेक्शन गाइडेंस अगर हो जाए, good to go. But without consistency, just having direction, just giving some tests is not going to work. कि भाई 2 बार टेस्ट दिया and then no other test. Just I read 5 days and then I took a 10-day break. No, that is not going to work. So consistency we have to maintain not just with studying, we also have to maintain consistency with taking breaks. You are a human being, you need to give yourself time to recharge. If you don't, you will face burnout, and then that will be a bigger problem. Burnout होने के बाद एक दिन की छुट्टी से काम भी नहीं चलता. Then you need a 3-4 day का vacation, right, where you're not thinking about these things. And in prelims का period, that 3-4 day का break is going to give you a lot of stress and guilt कि oh my god, I'm wasting so much time. And if you are taking a break in guilt, you are not going to recover. So keeping this thing in mind, you need to be consistent with your breaks. Every day, maybe 1 or 2 hours, you have to tell कि अच्छा ये free time है, इधर chill करना ही है और कुछ नहीं करना है. Chill करना है, you want to go and watch, some match, go watch some match. If you want to go and play, go play. If you want to do whatever the hell you want to do in those couple of hours, you are free to do. You can also keep a day in the week. Let's say, for example, when I was preparing, I used to keep Sundays off. कि भाई मतलब people will come home, I will go somewhere, I'll go meet my nieces, I'll do whatever the hell I want to do, but Sunday I will not be studying. And I communicated that to my family कि देखो, 1 day of the week I'm not going to study. 6 days I'll be on my desk, I'll be studying 8 to 10 hours. 1 day of the week I'm not going to be doing that. And they were like, okay, acceptable, so long as you're doing the 6 days. So having that communication helps. But you also need consistency with revision, with practice, and with feedback or your review. तो जब इतना सारा हमको कंसिस्टेंसी करना है, तो देन लाइक वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड कि भाई हाउ कंसिस्टेंसी वर्क्स आल्सो. सो द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट विद कंसिस्टेंसी इज दैट आई नीड टू शो अप. I need to show up. There will be some days where I may not be able to study 8 hours. There will be days where studying even 1 hour is a struggle. But showing up on that day, I may not hit the target, I will hit outside of the target. It is a mistake, fine. But not hitting on the target is a failure. If you don't show up one day, okay, fine. The second day that you don't show up, it is the start of a new habit. And the new habit is कि भाई जब मूड नहीं करे तो मत पढ़ना. तो with consistency, the same idea that we talked about in toppers का section, you don't get to choose कि आज मूड है या नहीं है. You have to study despite your mood. You have to show up every day. You can have predefined breaks, you can have emergency breaks, because life is like that. But mood is not one of the reasons for why you don't show up. Showing up is essential. You may be like showing up with half mind, half heart, whatever it is, but you show up. That is what matters. Now, second thing is with consistency, a lot of us think that it will look like this, that I will start being consistent from tomorrow, or whenever I've started this video, I've gotten so much motivation that now I'm going to be consistent from now onwards. Practically, this is how it is going to look like. On some days you'll be very highly motivated, other days not so much. High, low, high, low, high, low. This sort of a thing keeps going on. Overall, I am making progress, but day to day, it can look like a struggle. So therefore, in order to maintain consistency, you also need to reflect on how you have been doing. In the sense of, ki bhi, acha, this is something that we talked about in the topper section again. कि एवरी वीक और एवरी मंथ सिट डाउन एंड रिव्यू कि अच्छा मैंने जो करने की कोशिश करी थी कितना हुआ, हो भी पाया कि नहीं आया. Because if you do that, you will reflect on your progress, and at times it just happens ki, maybe I have made a lot of progress. Let's say I started giving tests in January, I was scoring 40-50 marks. By the time March comes, I'm getting 70-80 marks, but now because I've forgotten that I improved from 40-50 marks, I'm struggling and cosoing myself that I'm only getting 80 marks. तेरे बस की नहीं है, मतलब 100 प्लस लाना होता है, ये करना होता है, वो करना होता है, but I've forgotten that I've improved from 40 to 80 is a journey that if you remember, it will give you motivation that yes, it is possible. I have 2 more months, I can improve this from 80 to 100 also. I have improved from 40 to 80, right? So sometimes remembering that the days may not look all the same is what helps us keep going, right? So that brings us to the final section of this video, which is about mindset. What kind of a mindset do you want to bring for having a chance to clear prelims? Now here I want to talk a couple of things. सबसे important कि भाई what are the things that you should do, what are the things that you shouldn't do. ये mindset के साथ साथ एक overall overview आपको दे देंगे about the exam journey. Number one, in your to-do list, I want you to focus on understanding and not memorization. If you understand, it will be very easy for you to logically make those connections later on, like we saw in that water vapor wala question. Second, simplify and prioritize. There are a lot of things that need to be done. You have to decide what is important for you. I have given you some metrics, I have given you some principles. Okay, well, let's say when we talked about GS subjects, I told you do the static subjects first. All the other ones are important, but static subjects first. So that sort of prioritization you need to have. Isme, there is also a secondary prioritization based on previous year questions. That okay, I'm doing the static subjects first, great, but even within the static subjects, based on previous year questions, there are some very important topics. So if I'm making mistakes in those topics, I really need to double down on that. If I'm making some mistakes elsewhere, it's like, tolerable. Number three, get feedback, either from friends or from parents or from tests or from mentors, wherever, but get feedback. Because at times there are some obvious mistakes that we are making, and somebody else looking in on what we are doing, they might tell us ki acha ye kyun nahi kar rahe the. And this is not just you and me, matlab Elon Musk also makes these very basic mistakes. You will have seen him making those basic mistakes in public, but because he gets feedback and then he works to improve on those mistakes, he is absolutely phenomenal. Finally, be boring. You will have to miss parties. You will have to skip out on some friend chill sessions, and maybe those instantaneous messages पे कभी कभार जो मतलब बकर हो जाती है. You will miss out on a lot of these things. You will become very boring from the outside. People will say इसको तो बुलाने की जरूरत नहीं है, he or she never comes, and like it's just like don't ask them. It will happen. You have to accept that, because by being boring, you are working towards your progress. You are working to make your life different. You are working to improve your outcomes, and for that, if you are boring for a while, it is something that you need to accept. Now after that, not to do list की बात करते हैं. Don't become a PDF collector. A lot of people, what they do is that Telegram पे या friends group में, WhatsApp पे, wherever they are getting a lot of these PDFs which are compilations, and the best place to read, or like this is the summary of this entire subject, this that XYZ topper ka notes, 100 different PDFs you will get. You will collect them, you will keep them in a folder, and then you will never open them again. Do not become a PDF collector, because this is just distracting you from the thing that you're supposed to be doing. I've given you a basic book list. This book list has worked for like people to clear civil services exam for 15 years. The same basic book list. It works. Stick to it. Just review that multiple times. Don't become a PDF collector. Second, a lot of people start looking for shortcuts and hacks कि भाई अच्छा इस सब्जेक्ट में ना मेरे को बता दो, मतलब ये चीज नहीं करनी, मैं बस उतना ही करूंगा जितना you tell me कि okay, this is the bare minimum that I have to do. Bare minimum is Lakshmikant, the whole book. Don't try and look for more shortcuts and hacks, because if you are looking for shortcuts and hacks as a beginner, you are essentially cutting your own leg. Later on, once you've done one or two readings, there are shortcuts, there are hacks. I'm not saying that they don't exist, but if you do that in the first reading, you will, it will not lead to a lot of wasted effort down the line. So first, second reading may do not look for shortcuts and hacks in first and second reading. Later on, As you get a sense of the subject, as you've done the previous year questions, as you start giving tests, then you'll start figuring them out slightly on your own. If you still don't figure them out, come back here, I'll share them also. But first second reading mein, don't do that. Read multiple sources is a big no. Please do not read multiple sources. Stick to one basic book. That is the reason why we have kept a very limited reading list in this video, because it is much more important that you read these books multiple times. That will give you a much better output rather than, like, I've read 5 different books on polity कि भाई डी बासु भी पढ़ लिया, सुभाष कश्यप भी पढ़ लिया मैंने, and then लक्ष्मीकांत भी पढ़ लिया. No, read Lakshmikant multiple times will be much more useful. And finally, don't do an dopamine overdose. Rose, if you're using your phone for 6, 7, 8 hours, then you're not helping anyone. And if you then later on and say, no, I was distracted, take some steps to improve on that. I've shared a video on this exact thing, that, how can you get rid of your phone addiction. Check it out. It'll help. Get started with this. Use the new year as a moment where a lot of people have a lot of momentum कि अच्छा नया साल है, नया start है, and do something with it. So dopamine overdose is again on the big no list. Finally, the biggest mindset shift that I want you to keep, or I want you to take away from this video, is this: the obstacle is the way. This is an idea from Stoic philosophy. Stoics were people in ancient Rome and Greece, and they obviously, philosophy ka entire idea is that it helps you live a better life. With civil services exam preparation, this is something that's practically very, very useful. Whenever you are stuck, there is a way which will come out through that obstacle itself. Let's say you can't get a very high score in polity again and again and again. What is the solution? The solution is not कि I switch and move and everything else and I'll do polity later and then I forget about doing. No. You need to identify what are the errors, what are the issues, what are the gaps in your knowledge, and then double down and do that again. Once you do that, you will understand कि test नहीं number आ रहे थे, so by doubling down on that same subject, you will now score much better. The obstacle is the way. Now tests, score, these are obviously a very simple example for this. You'll face this in multiple other ways. Always remember this and keep this in mind, that there is a way out. It's just that you have to find it. Right, with that, we come to the end of this video. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments. And other than that, you can also reach out to us on WhatsApp and contact@upscprep.com, the email. Rest, I wish you all the best on your UPSC journey. And if you are giving Prelims 2020, you can check out the Prelims 360 course. All of these things we've talked about earlier. And then there was also the Prelims SIP course. So both of these courses are aimed at people who are preparing for Prelims 2026. And that's it. All the best.